Hey, hey. Hey, how's it going? Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. In the pre-show, waiting to see if we get that lovely couch about to fire. I'm also curious about last time we did this, we had the mics drop out, like after about 5 minutes, and I'm still not sure why because I've had no issues with my mics after several hours of streaming and recording and other platforms. So might have been a YouTube live stream hiccup that we experienced the other day, um, but it's definitely something I'm keeping an eye on as as we move forward. So it looks like we got an encoding error early on here. So I'm gonna try to solve for this by shutting some other stuff down. See if we can free up some space on the old compy laptop. It's it's always a struggle, but it's not like we try to make it a struggle. Let's go with that and see how far that gets us. I've been doing a lot of video editing this week, so I do understand if my machine is a little upset with me. It's like, why are you throwing all this heavy duty work at us, man? Well, it's because I like my people. That's what it's all about. I'm not sure if you folks have been checking in with the conference, Society of News Design organization I'm involved with. They're having their annual conference. It's in virtual form this year, so I've been helping out with that, and that's currently going on. Oddly enough, the live stream has now fired, which is good. I'm going to take a look and see if I can pick up whether that is we've got audio on that. So give me 1 second, and this is very much a test. Conference, Society of News Design organization I'm involved with. Yeah, looks like we got audio, so I feel pretty good about that. I'm going to keep that up. So I'll come back in and I'll check on that a couple of times through the course. I just don't want to record another live stream and have that issue happen again, being that I have not been able to identify what the issue was. Welcome to live streaming. But with that, we know CouchBot's firing. We know we've got a live stream today with audio, which is always important. So let's jump into it. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatics. Time for the feedback loop. I've got Abby in here with multiple exercises. She is just crushing it through the program. Really running hard at the material. And I've got Eve in here as well, who is at the other end of the program, working on her process page for her portfolio. For her case study in the portfolio, and I want to thank everybody who attended last night's office hours, after hours. Great event. There's probably a dozen or so of us there. I prefer like the group settings where there's just enough people to where everybody doesn't feel like they're having to talk all the time. But there's not so many people that people feel like they can't get a word in edgewise. So really enjoyed last time. I may even put a cap on it at that size. That was just the perfect size for an online event where you're trying to like catch up with people. And it's good to see familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. And Charlie, good to see you. I know you've been busy back in education land. A lot of New Pragmatic students were there. A lot of new faces though, and that's all. It's always nice to have that mix. And Ahmad, Ahmad was there, and I've seen Ahmad many times, chatted with him on like Twitter or seen him over on LinkedIn, and to finally meet Ahmad was really cool. So new faces, familiar names, people I hadn't met before, and then some of the original crew. So Eve and Luigi were there, for instance. So Very excited to do that experience again, probably in a few weeks. We'll probably do it in a few weeks. I'll let everybody know. But let's get this underway. I'm going to share my screen and we will go. All right. So first things first, we're going to jump in here on the typography exercises with Abby, and Abby is full disclosure. Abby's a design student. She's a designer that's going through. She's working through the interface side of things, and so many of the underpinnings of interface are really the basics of design. Like, do you understand how to pair typography? Do you understand how to use a grid? One of the things that we backed up on yesterday was really focusing on, hey, let's double down on that grid thing, because if you're not sure how to make grids happen, it's going to be kind of hard to line things up. Katie will tell you I like pound the table all the time on grids because it's fundamental. It's like reading. It's fundamental. Abby, one of the things I really appreciate that you did was, before you took notes, you took a stab at this exercise, and you were able to identify for yourself. You had, you were about halfway there. Most people that do any form of design work they know what the X height is. They know what a baseline is. They know what an ascender is. They know what a descender is. But do they know cap height? Do they know overhang? And overhang, I want to put a bright hot focus on overhang. If you look over here at the bottom of the capital B, I used to have the greatest trouble as a designer because I didn't realize overhang was really a thing. Overhang is not the baseline. The baseline often does not align with the overhang. The baseline aligns with the cap, and look what happens here. I always would look at this and go, man, this is a really poorly created font. No, that's just how that was intentional. That's how they're made. And until you realize that, you can go through and always be like trying to you're trying to nudge this up to align with the bottom, and then what you realize is that because you've nudged it up, the caps don't line up. So what is it? And just the awareness of no, that's not a mistake. That's how they're made. That will change how you use typography. And that's something just as basic as just how they align on the baseline. So ascender, descender, counter. When we talk about counter, we're talking about the open space inside of the letter. So technically, this is a counter. Those are counters. There's an open counter here because this makes and then this is a closed counter. So that you typically have a lot of counters. This is kind of an open counter, and it's just a little bit of space there. But it's good to know what those are. And then serifs. It's not an ear, that's a serif. So good job there. And again, I appreciate you taking that challenge before and then after you took your notes. So good job. Now this is about proposed usage, and the interesting thing here is I could see this as a label only if there was some more nuance to it. Like I would need some letter spacing here to space this out. The fine lines here inside of it. There's just so much contrast that when it gets small, it's hard to even see that that's an A. It works in most of the other places, but the O is starting to fall back. I typically look at these sorts of headlines. They feel really elegant. They don't work as paragraph type at all. I think they barely work as labels. They do okay. They do really well as headlines. So, I, like you, look at Roboto as, particularly in this usage, is not a great headline font. It's just so plain. There's just not a lot to it. Now, I've had people come through and say this isn't a good font for anything. and that's more of an opinion. And just like when I said that this probably isn't the greatest label, that too is an opinion. You can use it. Fundamentally, I would stay away from it because the contrast is so great that it falls apart. This doesn't fall apart, but equally there's nothing to hang the eye on as you're reading across. So this is very clean. Would I want to read a lot of content set in Roboto? Probably not. So I could see Roboto used as paragraphs in small bursts, but if it was like, some sort of New York Times long form story, no way. I want nothing to do with Roboto. Although labels, small usages, I can see it. Plex Serif. Now, this is IBM Plex. IBM Plex is a free font, and you're going with none. Personally, not a fan of this style of font. The ears make it distracting to read, difficult to play with lettering space. Maybe a simple label, all caps, like above it, could be the only thing going for it. Okay. This too is opinion. I think that in many ways, IBM Plex is easy to read as a body copy. It has the traditional serifs. It really has a old style feel for it here in the headline. But what I will say is IBM Plex, it either works for you or it doesn't. There are people that just they would want to use it for everything. Like I'll use this all the way down. And then there are other people that are just like, I don't want to touch it at all. So you appear to be in the camp of I don't want to touch it at all. You feel about IBM Plex the way I feel typically about Roboto. At least Roboto regular. Okay, if this was like Roboto bold, maybe we can come in here. If I switch this to bold, I feel a little bit better about it. And maybe that's the key here with Plex. If you came in and looked at it in the bolds, I think you might have a different opinion of it. But maybe just this regular weight is not doing it for you. So again, I can see how you got there. I don't necessarily agree with it. I happen to like Plex. I've used Plex on some projects. I think I used Plex on the circuit, if I'm correct. Let's go look. I'm just curious. We'll come back to that. Is Plex over here? I thought I had pushed this to... Oh, maybe it's in Netlify. I'm just curious. Yep, it's here. So... yeah, but I'm not using Plex Serif. I think I'm using Plex Serif here. And yeah, I'm using Plex Serif here as a label, but tracked out. And I'm using Plex Sans, it's just Plex, here on these headlines. So it's kind of interesting. I put my money where my mouth is when it comes to Plex Sans. And there's Plex Sans. This is Plex Serif. And you get an idea of where... I guess I put my... Again, I said I put my money where my mouth is. I've used it on projects before. Again, we'll come right back to that. Let's go over here and take a look at typography exercise 2, because this is the more important one. So here... you're in the realm of doing building type specimens. And oddly enough, I've given you Plex Sans as the example, and you've went out and picked 4 pieces of typography that I think are pretty strong. You redesigned this a bit, mainly because it looks like you were wanting to do more of a one pager, which is fine. The real key here is finding typography that has enough weight to it or enough options that you could legitimately use it in a project. And when I say legitimately use it in a project, what I'm specifically talking about is, are there enough weights to assign different jobs to create the contrast that's necessary? And do you have the italics that are necessary for you to use it for citations and things that tend to pop up from time to time in your typography? Because of the way our language is written, we use italics to identify certain types of work within our writing. So that means that if you're going to use anything if you're going to pick a typeface that's going to be used for a site, and if there's any citations that are on that, you're going to need italics. I've seen a lot of people, not you, Abby, but I've seen a lot of people pick out typography that might have 1 or 2 weights and no italics. That immediately rules that out for using it for anything other than basically decoration. Okay? And none of the typefaces that you picked, Barlow, Lotto, Garmin, Laura, Laura is the closest to it, and it's just light on weights. Okay? It's not bad, it's just light on weights. So long as it has an italic, you can consider using it for more than just, headlines and whatnot. It's interesting. One of the things that I always enjoy looking at is the way the K's are made in italics. Notice this is a pretty standard K, but then you come over here and look at this, and it's got that looped K. It's very interesting. It's almost like a shoelace. And then you've got it again here, and I think this one's a little more elegant in my opinion. Laura versus Garamond. I like that K a lot. But look at the G. Okay, the G flipped here from being the double looped style to the single counter with the tail, and then we come over here and you see that these follow, these do not. Well, actually these do follow, but they don't. It's interesting to notice where the style changes and where it stays the same. You've got it with the K's in this instance. You also have it with the A's. So the K stays the same, the G stays the same, the A's change. Okay, the A's change, but the G's and the K's are the same. A's change, G's stay the same, K's change. K's change, G's change, A's change. They all change. So, this is really interesting, nerdy stuff. This is the type of stuff that I look at and I pay close attention to. When it comes down here to the pairings, you're just trying to get a sense of, okay, if I wanted to keep this in the same type style, if I just wanted to use one typeface, and I'm just going to use body, I'm going to use weight and size. You could probably get away with it here, not so much here. Either one works okay here. I think that you can tell that if you took this and you made it, instead of semi-bold, if you took it and made it extra bold, which I think is probably what you have there, the contrast is too great here, where when it's semi-bold and regular, it's just enough. And this over here is extra bold and medium. Okay, so you're adjusting up so that you have the right amount of contrast. This is not a game of maximum contrast, and that's something that a lot of people miss. I can't go any lighter than regular, but here, if I went regular, you get an idea. These feel much more alike. They feel they marry together easier than the others when there's the greatest amount of contrast. So it's not just about maximum contrast. Here, again, this is too light for usage in that space. The headline is fine. You flipped it around here, and this is interesting. These thin headlines can work, but typically the size on them has to be so big, or there has to be like spacing or underlines or like background colors. Like there's got to be something to help it hold its space. So this kind of combination can work, but there's typically one extra step that's involved. And this here is, again, you've got a couple here, like too light on the for paragraph, too light for paragraph. Fine, though, when used as a headline, but you probably need a little more work. Let's go over here and look at part 2. And part 2 gave you the start of an article. And basically the idea here is, all right, so if you have to pair typography together, and you've done some selections here. What did you pick? This is Barlow, this is Barlow, this is Barlow, and then this is Laura. So you paired Barlow in a few different weights and Laura, and this is fine. You've done basically what I would hope that you would do. That's 20. That's 16. This is 108. So this. I think you were designing for the space that's here. So you went really big with the headline, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The label here is 24. That may end up being a little large in most instances. But again, you're getting your feet wet with this. Now this is like this is being set up as a promo for a podcast. So basically, the rest of the page is probably some sort of website material, and you've got a button here because it's the Reset podcast, and here's your headline, and this is where I just want to come in. So this is 24. This is Barlow. This is Laura, and this is Barlow again. Barlow. So this works very well. There's nothing really to add here. Where we get into trouble typically is over here, because in a bubble, what you've done is it makes perfect sense. We talk about needing to have everything have its own job. All right. So restaurant, Taco John, Geyer Springs, and here's like it's closed right now. Next delivery is at 9:30 a.m. and you can pre-order. But what if we had another space available? And for this, I'm just gonna like copy this up, and I want to take a look at Taqueria's Tortilleria. Okay, so what happens when I take this, and let's just kind of put it in the same. So you're in Montserrat all of a sudden, which was interesting because that's not a typeface that you had picked out. So Barlow, Laura, yeah, that's interesting that you picked up Montserrat, but I'll go with it. So there's Montserrat. You have this at 46. So there's 46. So that's what happens to it. All right. When you have to, this is where we begin our discussion about designing a component, a shape that's going to be used over and over and over again, and different information is going to hit it. Does the restaurant label matter? Not really. Does the restaurant name matter? Greatly. Does the address matter? Probably. Let me just hide that for a second. Does the address matter? Probably. Close, next delivery, it's probably fine. Pre-order, it's probably fine. It's these two things. It's the address is going to change, and the restaurant name is going to change, and that's what you have to have. You have to design flexibility around. So if we were really designing this and thinking, okay, longer things may have to fit in here, I'm going to immediately start taking this down significantly. And what I'm seeing right now is 30 might not be small enough, but 24 is. And at 24, then the rest of this begins to take on a slightly different form. But then when we come back and we say Taco John, it's like, what do you do there? And that's when you say, okay, well, do I design with space in mind? Do I design this and say, okay, well, all of this is going to be at the bottom and this is going to be at the top, or maybe this is going to be at the top, and I'm just going to have 2 lines, and if it's Taco John, as it was before, maybe this information just rides up here. And basically I'm saying that this information, because it's variable in length, it can take up all of the space if it needs, or it can move up to the top, and I'm just going to leave this extra space in between. Or you could say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to have all of this ride, and it'll just lock to the top, and it will have variable length all the way down. That's fine too. But where we started out with this was Taco John. And what I'm hoping that we can see is that Taco John, as it was initially designed, probably isn't going to work for the vast majority of the elements that could go in here. All right? And if that's the case here, you can imagine what the case is over here. Okay, this is a mobile listing, and when we think about mobile, we're talking about like the things that I pull up on my phone. This is 4. Okay, one of the things I will say about anything like this is that the minimum typically is 10, and when I say 10, it's like 10 for the smallest things. Okay, so if you're going to have a label, 10 would be the minimum. Okay, and that begins to take an impact on this at 44. Is that now 20? And would you do the outline if it was 20? Like there's all sorts of decision making that happens in here when you're faced with new constraints, right? And one of those new constraints is a long restaurant name. And this is something that you will, if I said this is going to be 20, it's still like wrapping over. It's like, okay, what do I do with it? Well, this is where you might have to, you might have to specifically move some things around, like, oh, well, this is going to be over here, and that's going to be over there. And I'm not attempting to design this right now. I'm just like showing you, like, you might have to move this information around, and oddly enough, it fits one line. And this can't be, 8, might need to be 12. Okay, but I didn't give you tortilla taqueria, nickel. I didn't give you that. I gave you Taco John. Right? And part of the trouble with like Taco John is you're looking at it and you're like, man, I need to fill up the space. It's so small. Okay? But I need you thinking about what happens when this bad boy comes to town and you got to figure out what to do with it, because it's no longer just Taco John, right? So I'm going to undo that, because I part of the problem here is like when I start redoing this stuff, and I need you to see it, not me. All right, so we'll come back. We'll come back to this one. I'll throw it back your way to see what you can come up with. But I did want to take some time to talk through these. I think everything over here is fine. Okay, but when we get into when we get into replicable like listings, and think about where are listings? Basically all over your phones. Like everything that's in your phone is some sort of list. Whether it's a contact list, whether it's restaurants, whether it's calendar invites, it's all a list of some sort. Okay? So you live, frankly, more in this realm than you do in this realm. All right? You may think because you work at a media publication that you live over here. You don't. Your day to day is over here. All right? Let's take a look at Eve. And again, good tacos right down the street. Eve's got her Healthy Eats project. And I'm just going to check the live stream real fast. You live, frankly, more in this realm. Well, the good news is that the audio has been working the entire time. So I know that we've got good audio today. Eve, you have Healthy Eats, and this is your, well, what is this? Wait. Detailed design process. Intro. Okay. So you picked up the same top. That's interesting. I think I might switch the image out because at first I thought this was your overview because it's using the same image. I don't mind the intro. I think I would come back with something that showed a little different angle on this because I think using that same image it gets confused. Oh, didn't I just see this? I'm not sure. So I would probably redirect toward something else. You've got other assets, so I think you can easily put something together. So intro, research, analysis, ideation, prototype, conclusion. Oh, this is nice. Okay. Stakeholder interview, testing results, competitors, analysis. Affinity mapping. So we're getting into our personas now. Flows. Okay, so you're, yeah, I don't mind what you have here. I think I would like to see well, there's not a lot to show up here in terms of like assets. Study the competition, know the customers. There's just not a ton to show up here. This might be where I took some, like here I might include like some logos of the competitors that I was looking at, maybe just in a row, like 1, 2, 3 sort of thing. I like the way that you've kind of picked up the same design, but you've now kind of put that peach behind it to help call out specific results. Key discoveries. It's a little tight over here. I don't see any reason why you couldn't make that wrap. So I would make that adjustment as well. But overall, this feels clean. What happens here when I hit interview? Okay, so it took me to the interview doc. It opened in a new link. That's fine. I like it overall. I do. Let's see what artifact do you have here. If this is the affinity map, I might actually screenshot this, and it is. I might come through and screenshot this and use it at the top of this affinity mapping piece to kind of show, like, oh yeah, this is the sticky note thing. But yeah, I think this is on the right path. And I know for people that are coming in, they're like, oh my god, it's so long. It's like, yeah, well, this is the process doc. This is not the overview. The overview is I'm gonna go to work. case study. The overview is here. My only thing, Eve, is I don't necessarily think I would keep this same lead image. because I think that piece is confusing, because I felt like I was, is this the thing? No, this is something else. So keep that in mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's edition of the, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for the last 45 minutes or so, looking at student work. If you have any questions, feel free to jump over in the New Pragmatic Discord channel. You can sign up at newpragmatic.com. And if you're looking for mentorship, come chat with me, newpragmatic.com/mentorship. Otherwise, be sure to click subscribe if you're getting value out of these videos, and I will chat with all of you